since there's not a lot of us, I think we can start off by going around and just like everyone can introduce themselves and like say why they're here today. Some of you have been invited to be panelists. Some people are new to Tough Topic Tuesdays. So I'll start and I'll say I'm Clarissa. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work for as a student assistant for the Intercultural office. And I've been for like about a year now. It's just this last semester and this semester have been moderating Tough Topic Tuesdays every Tuesday. So yeah, I'm really happy for everyone to be here. And then we can start with the people on Zoom introducing themselves.
I'll go and then I'll pass it to y'all, all right? Hi, everybody. My name is Jamaica. I go by the He and They series. I am the Assistant Director of Intercultural Student Affairs. I have some echo feedback. I hope everybody heard me okay. And I just kind of help with TTTs, but I really just give it to y'all to think about what you want to talk about and do. So I'll pass it off to Crystal.
My name is Crystal Livingston. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am the new senior associate, excuse me, let me get this title right. Senior Assistant Director of Admissions, and I'm specifically in charge of the Atlanta region. So I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm tasked with doing a lot of recruitment, not only here in Atlanta, but in the South in general, with specifically an emphasis on diversity recruitment. And that's something that I have a lot of experience in at other colleges and universities. So I'm excited to get to know the current students so that when we do recruit these students to Emerson College, they can make those connections, they can have a peer village, and also to service you as well in any way that I can do so. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
And then is it Melina?
Yeah,
go on.
So my name is Melina. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm actually from Boston, and the lovely Clarissa asked me to speak today, so that's why I'm here.
What's up, everybody? My name is Diego. I'm a local from Lynn, Massachusetts. I just came here because, for one, Clarissa obviously invited me here to speak. And I'm just kind of like what Crystal was it, I think, right? So kind of what she said, I'm trying to create a bigger community of all diverse and inclusive members so that we could just have a bigger and better community as we strive all together. So.
Thank you.
I'm Kiki. I'm a local resident. Clarissa invited me to speak today.
Hello, I'm Ayana. I'm also from Boston. I was not invited. I just came to kind of reap the benefits of this community everyone is making and, help out in any way I can. So.
And you're welcome to answer any questions also, since you're here too. Like, there's not a lot of us, so that would be awesome if you want to add input to all the questions. So thank you for being here, everyone. I'm really excited. And yeah, I think just with that, I'm going to just get us started. And I kind of want to start off by just reading this quote. I was doing a little bit of research before this Tough Topic Tuesday, about just the impact that Boston schools and people who aren't from Boston and then come here for school have on the community. And I guess one of the quotes I found, for example, was that slowly we have begun to push out local residents who can no longer afford to live in their generational hometown. Boston is one of the most gentrified cities in America, according to a study by the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Boston is no longer prioritizing its residents, but instead it's catering to the super rich and its students' populations. Despite an average household income of $65,000, 20% of the city's population is impoverished, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So I feel that quote pretty much speaks for itself in terms of the roots behind why I thought this conversation was important. And just hearing from the people who actually live here and then end up going to school here, because I think obviously your voices are really important to this conversation and just starting this conversation in general. So my first question is just wondering, could each of you tell me a little bit about where in Boston you grew up and some of your favorite parts about where you grew up?
I can start, I guess. So I have kind of moved a few different places. I grew up in Roxbury until I was in about middle school, and then my family moved to Dorchester, and I was there for like a while, and then end of high school I moved to Hyde Park, which is where I live now. So yeah, I'm in Hyde Park now. I've moved around a bit, but I'd say, what was the second part of the question? Favorite parts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say just my favorite parts are where I grew up, just because I'm the most familiar with them. And, you know, it's where my families are from. And so I think for that reason, you know, just the parts where I'm familiar with are like more special to me. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Where I grew up is like Hyde Park, that area. I went to high school in Roxbury, but yeah, mainly I grew up in Hyde Park. And some of my favorite places in this city, the movie theater right there. That's like where I went anytime I wanted to go to the movies, was that movie theater. Walking in the garden with my family. So like during high school, probably the Seaport. But that's like kind of new. And yeah, just that's about it. Oh, the Arboretum too.
Oh, what's that?
It's like
Hey.
I don't know how to
Hey.
describe it. It's like a nature walk.
Oh.
Yeah, there was like quite a few field trips there. The Museum of Science.
Yeah.
For field trips. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So I grew up in Lynn. It's like a little bit north from Boston. It's just like Clarissa says, like yeah, gentrified now, but it's like a little mini hood. I went to school mostly in Lynn, but then I moved back. I moved to Saugus. It's like the town right over. But the places that I really got to know were like Revere Beach. I don't know if any of you guys been to Revere Beach, but like it's dope at night. Nahant Beach, not so much. Water's trash. Good places like some good eats. Honestly, is like I know in Lynn there's like a bunch of like Italian spots. There's some good Chinese, Vietnamese food. I got a little bit. I'm like a little. I'm not too tapped into every. There's like, I just know a little bit of like Everett, Malden. Like I said, Chelsea, Revere, East Boston, but yeah, I guess I'm just like a little bit everywhere.
Thank you.
So I'm from Mattapan, but specifically the area I'm from is Lower Mills. So I get to see Milton, Hyde Park, Dorchester, all those type of areas.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite places from there were like the Commons, and the Commons. I went to school in Milton, so there were a couple like nature reserves in the back if you really know where you're going. So those were like the Blue Hill Trails. Those were some of my favorite things to go on for field trips, and kind of been everywhere. Like, and I've also lived in Braintree and Randolph also.
Thank you. Well, we got a little bit from everywhere in Boston. I love that. So thank you all for sharing that. And then I guess my next question is, you know, we had that quote, and I mean, you grew up here, so I'm just like wondering, how has that gentrification done by the colleges in Boston affected the surrounding communities, or like your community specifically? Or like, what have you seen from that as you've grown up in these communities?
I can say like, a few things. So it's definitely like, it's hard to miss, right? Like Boston has some of the best schools, and so with that attracts, an influx of students. But it's just crazy. Like, I had a lot of family that lived kind of by Northeastern for years and years and years and years. And recently, like within the past like 4 or 5 years, they've all had to move because Northeastern's like putting up more dormitories and, providing more housing for their students. And so my family's like, part of my family has been like sort of pushed out to the suburbs now. And that's just like one example that's kind of crazy to me. But you see it everywhere, honestly. You see it everywhere. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you so much.
I'll take it. I guess for me, like at least for like my area, since there really isn't too much like college. There's more community colleges, if anything. But even at that, tuition is starting to raise. It's starting to get higher. In which case, like that also has an effect on like mortgages, houses, taxes. Which is why like the city now is becoming more like little metropolitan instead of like little town. For my family at least, I just know that back in the day for them going into college, I mean, for a couple of them, they mostly went into community colleges like Bunker Hill and just like local community colleges. They mostly now, kind of like what Melina said, they've been pushed toward the suburbs, and I guess it has changed the whole like landscape of being a resident in the area. So that's definitely what it feels like to me.
I honestly don't really know. I mean, like what Melina said, I pass Northeastern to get to school often, and like the whole opposite side of, I think it's Columbus, some street. It's like the land is just like flat now. So I have no idea what was there, but like they tore it all down. Now they're building apartment buildings for like Northeastern students. I don't know if this has to do with the colleges. Like I never really put together that the gentrification was because of the colleges. So I don't know if it's like everywhere. But yeah, I mean, definitely in my area on like the main roads or the main like T ways, you see a lot of like local businesses that are just kind of like not there anymore. And then there's like apartments that have like really, really high rent like there now. So
back to me.
good luck.
I guess increase of like not taxes. Rent.
Yeah.
No, but
Taxes?
I don't know.
Both.
Everything.
Everything.
Because I was trying to do mortgage. Because I was gonna say you know what? I'll explain. Y'all can guess it. So pretty much like the house I have, it's kind of big. Property tax. It's increased. That's what I was trying to say. Property tax. It's increased a lot because when my parents first came here, like they didn't have to pay that much, but now like my dad's only paying like thousands and thousands of dollars for a 2-family house. Like, do you see the disconnect? That's a problem, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so kind of like going off that, because I was thinking more of like dormitories and like those apartment complexes you see often in the city, but like even just like housing, like more like a bunch of students moved into the house next to me. So like that just tells you right there, like it's like not just the areas like where the schools are, but like, oftentimes like the students will go to school, they'll live in a dormitory or like an apartment, and then they'll decide to stay. So they'll either stay in like those apartments or they'll move to the houses that the rent is getting higher and higher, and the people who've been living there for generations can no longer afford. And so they get pushed out, and these new people who these new students or new families or whatever who have the money to pay for them, they start moving in. And then it's just like our communities that have been here for generations get pushed out all the way to the suburbs. And yeah, that's basically what's been happening.
Yeah, and I think like echoing what all of you just said, like I was also like reading like some stuff, and like I've seen it too, is that like there's people even from Emerson and stuff who like they don't want to pay for the apartments around here, so then they'll go to like Alston or like these other communities where like there's houses that they're moving into as students, like with their friends and stuff, that it's just, again, like they can afford that because they're paying for like these private institutions, but it's also just kicking out the people who originally were living there because they just can't afford that rent anymore. And it's like just now catering these like students who end up coming here. And also, not to mention, like, obviously it's like a predominantly white institution. I think all of the ones around Boston. So that's just like another layer of it also. And Jamaica, I saw that you put something in the chat if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not from Boston. I'm a transport, but whenever I come to a community, I invest myself in a community, and so y'all adopt me pretty quickly. I ain't gonna lie about it. All right, I'm pretty fly, so y'all tend to adopt me pretty quickly. And so hearing from like a lot of the like older folks or folks that have been living in communities. So I primarily worked in. Well, number one, I lived in Hyde Park, lived in Dorchester. I just happened to want to live in the communities where people look like me, and so that's where I tended to go. But two things about that. It's number one, like the ability to get into the city, right? If you work into the city, right? The trains and the buses will leave early enough for you to get there. But coming back, baby, oh shoot, it's like you better catch that last one or else, you about to be walking 3 miles back home or whatever, So, number one, the infrastructure of Boston in general having no problem sending that working class, right, black and brown bodies to work, but then trying to get them back home at a reasonable, timely manner is all of a sudden an issue. But then you expect folks to be back at work got to leave at 4 a.m. when the first bus or shuttle goes. You know what I'm saying? So that's number one. Number two, in the communities that I've serviced and been a part of, a lot of folks, particularly like my titas would be telling me, talking about how like JP used to be the Latin Quarter and now like it's not, like it's gone. Like, what Latin Quarter? I'm confused. Particularly in that regards, gentrified. I know that we're talking about college students, but y'all kind of touched on it. When college students move into those areas, right, and kick other people out, or even transports like me that may come, right, depending on where we might settle, right, because it may be affordable or not, and who has the money to be in those places, and landlords being like, oh, so this person can pay, let me say, $1,600 in rent. Bet. Can this person pay maybe $1,800 in rent for a one bedroom? Oh, they can? Cool, let's raise it to $1,800. So there's a lot of things going at work here, right? There's the infrastructure of Boston and what it's willing to allow people to do in terms of work, right? And there's a lot of working opportunities. That's great. That's fantastic. But then there's the barriers too that come with that, right? And college students, same thing, right? Like, bet you might have part of your tuition set aside for dormitory, or you might not. Be like, wait a minute, I could go find this house and split it with 8 of my friends, right? But the landlord, that make no difference as long as that rent's paid, right? They're like, okay, $3,200 for this 3-bedroom. Y'all gonna split it amongst 6 of y'all? I don't care as long as I get my $3,200. So talking about the multiple facets that also kind of contribute to this problem and unfortunately makes it grow. I don't live, unfortunately, in those areas anymore because I've noticed that, back to kind of what y'all saying, what services are provided. You see local businesses disappearing, new businesses that pop up that may not serve that clientele. So like Hyde Park, we need a rehab center. Absolutely. But it was like one of those rehab centers that you would find in the middle center of Boston. And I kind of wonder, like, number one, what insurance that rehab center will take, right? And if the residents of Hyde Park can afford that, right? Depending. So thinking about then too, when local businesses leave, what businesses or chains start to pop in and all of a sudden help also contribute to kicking and moving folks out. Because like, oh shoot, I can't afford that. For example, new Whole Foods that just got put up in there. Like, damn, where the fuck am I supposed to shop for groceries, right? So all these things play a facet, and I love that you're bringing a lot of those things into nature, but I also wanted to call just the infrastructure and how Boston is built in itself either, because it's not hard to get from one place to another place in Boston, but because of how it is built, it does pose those barriers. So I just kind of want to jump in and kind of speak to what I've noticed as a transport, but what have you guys have offered me, thankfully, as adopting me a little bit into some of y'all's communities.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that. I don't know if any of you feel free to add to that also, but I know even from talking to people about who are especially students who, are from Boston who end up going to school here, that transportation is definitely a big barrier even to getting to classes and stuff, and professors aren't always necessarily super understanding of that because they all have cars and stuff that they get to drive. Yeah, I see you nodding and stuff because there's the transportation and just the different times and stuff that kind of exist for you have to be here at this time, and you might be an hour early or something, and just figuring that out. I think I've heard at least has been a barrier to people, and I don't know if any of you want to add to that. Yeah,
I'll jump in on that. So it takes me over nearly an hour to get to school every day. My first class on Monday is at 8:00. It takes me, I have to walk from my house, get on the trolley. The trolley doesn't start until 6:30. I leave at 6:30. So it's either a hit or miss, and then it takes 20 or 30 or so minutes for the next one to come. Then I have to get to Ashmont. Depends if the train wants to work or not, because today it took 20 minutes for the first train to go, so I had to go take the bus. And then because the Park Street stop is all the way up there, I started taking the Boylston one. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to walk 20 plus minutes to get down here. I'm like, bro, what the hell? I'm the commute here, it's not bad, but it's inaccessible. I have nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. If I'm an hour early, I don't have nowhere to go. I'm just outside, sitting on the floor looking like a lost puppy. Outside of the classroom I'm supposed to wait for it. And the only place I actually have is here. But it's the furthest place from the main campus. And it doesn't make sense to me. There should be, stuff for off-campus students within the main campus.
Yeah.
I want to jump in on that just because, I myself, so last semester before I originally moved here, the commuter lifestyle I've always thought was I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning I thought it was gonna be easier than just being here, but seeing how last time it was it's a whole different setup, because kind of like what Kiana said, first of all, going to the train station, it's probably not going to be, for me, it wasn't near my house. So since I lived in Saugus, I had to travel all the way to Revere, which was a whole 30 minutes. Plus traffic in the morning, it's looking slow for anybody who's going to school or going to work or whoever's rushing. And in my case, since I had two little siblings, I was pretty much the last one to get dropped off. So I not only had to wake up 2 hours earlier just to make sure that I get on the first train, because once it hits 7:00, I know that for everybody else, that's pretty much waking up hours. So if I get there late, I'm pretty much going to be here late. So, but once I came here, for me, since my classes were a bit earlier, I had a whole hour just to be outside the classroom. So it, being a commuter is not the same thing as you do not have the luxury to just roll out of bed and head down the street in 5 minutes. So,
and they still late. How you still late and you live here? Make it make sense.
Do you want to add to that?
Sure. So my travel situation is actually similar to yours. I would have to walk very, very far to get to the trolley, so I don't usually take that route. My parents don't really like me to go that way. So I use the orange line. The bus that comes to my neighborhood does not come. So it like comes if it wants to. It'll probably
It's picky.
it literally the bus shows up if it wants to. So sometimes I'll walk, sometimes I'll ask to get dropped off if I can, other things. And then, once you get on the orange line, it is easier because Chinatown is right there. But yeah, I also agree with the spaces being reserved for off-campus students and whether or not that's a thing. Because when you're here, you're just kind of
Stuck.
Yeah, you're just kind of stuck. You
Yeah.
can't eat or drink in the library, so it's like if you go to the library to hang out, but you need to eat lunch, you can't eat there. Other things,
Don't have meal swipes.
I don't have that.
you can't go to the dining hall.
Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
I didn't know that. I
I
thought
was
you could
like-
sit.
I was like, it's freaking cold out here. You're not gonna let me in here still? I was like, damn.
Yeah, so all that sounds a lot of problems for commuter students in terms of accessibility to our own campus that they're going to in your own community where you grew up. So that people have been pushed out of because they can't afford the rent here and have to go further out. So as you can see, a lot of problems connected to that. I see there's a question here, Crystal.
Yes. So I'm soaking everything in, listening to everything, and as an administrator, a new administrator at that, I'm very disheartened to hear this experience. I asked in our chat, is there a commuter services office or commuter services department? And Matthew answered that question. So thank you. Have you all, if you were to gather other students together, have you formed or thought about forming, or has it been discussed, a commuter student association for the purposes of advocacy and, making some formalized noise on the campus?
I can try to answer that. So I have a friend who is also off campus, and she's been kind of very vocal over email, and we both realized we kind of have this shared, need to kind of say something or just this shared feeling. I do think that would be a good idea. Yeah, and now that I'm here, it's an even better idea just because finding people who were commuters was kind of difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, Melina, is there anything? I don't want to skip over you. If you have anything you want to add, also.
No, I mean it's just more of the same. I also commute. I live in Hyde Park, like I said, so I live 10 minutes away from the Purple Line, the commuter rail. So I walk every morning, and I take that, and then I walk to campus. There's pros and cons. I like how the commuter is very on schedule, so I know exactly when it's going to be there and exactly when it's going to leave. But the thing about that is it creates a sort of stress that all right, I have to get there at this time, and I have to be an hour early to class, or I have to right when my class ends, today, right when it ends, I have to sprint to the train to get home. Otherwise, I'm just stuck on campus, and I have nothing to do. So yeah, it's just more of the same, but everyone was saying.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Oh yeah, and Jamaica also saying the commuter rail also costs more in general.
It does. I try to get away with not scanning my ticket though, so. Yeah.
So, also just going to make sure I see that Matthew's adding some resources in the chat for the off-campus student service emails and stuff, which I'll be sure to share with you and make sure you all have each other's information because you're all commuters and experiencing similar problems from what I'm hearing, and I think that, I mean, it's also like a lot of work, obviously, to have to like email and feel like unheard when, bringing up these problems, because I know that there's been a lot of commuters in the past, and it's just like definitely interesting that there's not really much that has been like done about it. And I just feel like, I don't know, personally, like there should be definitely more care towards like the people who are literally from the Boston community who are going to school here. So yeah, thank you all so much for sharing those points and bringing those up. I really hope that we can like make sure to get those out and like share those also with the people in the college community. And so that brings me to my next question, which is like, what are some things that you wish the college would do to support you as like a Boston resident and like commuter student? Mm-hmm.
Actually make me feel like a student here. Like sometimes I don't feel like I'm an actual student at Emerson, because like people talk about all these events and stuff like that, and like when you look at the times when like they're doing these events, I'm like, I either have to get home or like it's too dark outside. Well, for me last year I got followed home on the way back, so I kind of watch out for when it's too dark for me. But like certain events or like certain things that people talk or like on campus students talk about, like I heard people have to sign off campus students like they're a guest to go into their dorm room. I'm like, but we're still students at the end of the day, no? And like the dining hall pass, like even if you're not eating there, you should still be able to sit there. Like it feels like there's no space for us and we have to find space. And even when we find space, it's not our space to take.
Yeah.
So like I want to feel more like a student here. Like I want to feel like there's more things for me to do. Like right now, I don't feel like a student.
Thank you.
Going off of that, I know I totally agree. Like I'm a transfer student, so last semester was my first semester, and like I've been trying to like go to events and like just like do stuff so I can feel like an Emerson student. And I'm a VMA student, so like a lot of the events are at night, or they start at like 7 and they go until like 10, and I'm like, I can't really do that because like I have to be home and I have to like wake up early the next morning to go to class, so I definitely agree, like we're not thought of when these events are being planned.
Basically the same thing that you guys are saying about the events is true. I will say I felt it most during orientation. Like just like some of the events were at night, and then most of the events were at night. And then I remember like I went to an event that was, I think it was probably at like 4 or something, and it was kind of just like mingling. So like I actually like made the commute to school, and then like people were like there, and then people were like going back to their dorms. But I had like planned to be there for a certain amount of time in order to make the commute home. And then the other thing, like the orientation groups, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought that like the people in my orientation group would also be commuters. So that like it would be like, yeah, this is the commuter lounge. This is like where you guys hang out and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I ended up being like adopted by an orientation group because I was in the wrong group. But yeah, so I think just kind of smaller stuff like that, and yeah, what everyone else was saying with the dorms, like signing in.
I definitely agree. Sorry to cut anyone off. I definitely agree with the orientation stuff because I had to make like a tough decision because like as I said, I'm a transfer student, and so I had to make the decision to like, because there was like 3 or 4 days of orientation, and I was like, I'm not doing every single one because I have to commute. And so I was like, I went one day, and it was like the day that I really didn't need to go. And I was like, I wish I had known, so I definitely think it would be smart to like put commuter students together and like be like, these are the resources for you guys, or like the spaces for you guys, because I missed out on all that.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding all of these details. And I'm actually definitely going to like take note of all of these and like bring it up to like student government and stuff, because maybe even like a commuter senator in the student government would be nice to at least have someone to like advocate for those needs, because there's a big portion of people who are like commuter students, and it just like it's this is literally your community and you should feel at home here. Like this is yours. And I don't know, it's just there's a lot of work that the college needs to do, like with these commuter lounges and like just more opportunities to getting involved within the community. Because again, like these events are like 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. It's like, how are you supposed to get home then? Like, and I'm definitely something that we should be bringing up more. And then I see in the chat, Matthew says the Lion's Den is also a space to hang out and eat. And Jamaica said, sounds like we got to do some commuter student events somehow. Like I went to a school that was deemed a commuter school, so we did a college prom. We did get-togethers in different parts of off campus in different areas of the communities, so folks that were commuting from there could get together and meet at this local spot and do XYZ. Yeah, I love that. I think that would be really a great idea. Did you want to?
I mean, everything's pretty much been said, but just to add just to bounce off of like what everybody said in a personal opinion, like what everybody says is so true, just because like from what I've experienced last semester was, like when you said, it doesn't feel like you are a student when you come here. That definitely is so true, just because you have the pressure in your head that you always have to make it on time. You have to be punctual, and you have to, if you don't have the day planned out, everything will collapse. And then that's just more stress on top of your shoulders. So it creates like this mentality. You just always have to be on top of your things when you feel like that shouldn't be for like a college kid, right? Even if you live here, you still, like I said before, you have the luxury to wake up at a certain time before class begins. But yet for those who are commuting, they have to they just have to follow a lifestyle or a plan so that they can execute the day correctly. So I definitely feel like there should be a community space, or there should be like some type of like organization or like some type of group where everybody can chip in and have to communicate like these things, just because like it's not something that is left to be said. It's something that weighs on you. And like the more you put it off, honestly, it's like it just gets bigger and bigger. Unless like that's why you feel like there's like a proximity between you and school. Like you feel more detached when it comes to these events, and like with everybody coming in and out of the dorm rooms, it's just like it becomes a divide. You feel like you're just not experiencing that like luxurious college life. So I definitely agree with like what everybody says. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just like to also in the chat, Jamaica says, I'll try and talk to off-campus services too and see where Intercultural can help, because y'all are it. Sleep is a part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and some of your needs aren't being met. Y'all doing things because it's just in you to do, but best believe you shouldn't have to work that hard to get what is meant for you. It should already be here for you. Heavy on that. So thank you for adding that. Yeah, and I guess that brings me to like my next question, which is like, from your experience, have there been any misconceptions people who come to school in Boston have about you as someone from Boston?
I have like one thing. So like I've noticed, I don't know, it's like weird. Like I'll be talking to people and they'll be like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from here, I'm from Boston. And like I'll be like, oh, where? What part? And I'll be like, oh, Hyde Park. And like they're like, what? Like, what's that? And I'm like, part of Boston. And it's just like this weird thing that like happens actually a lot. And so when I met Ayana, because she's in one of my classes, I was like, oh, I'm from Hyde Park. She's like, me too. I was like, oh my God, because you don't get that often. Like people just assume that it's just like Back Bay and like the downtown area and like that's it. But like there are other communities like Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Hyde Park. And so it becomes this like awkward thing for me personally when people like try to talk to me about that, because I'm like, I don't know, like they just don't understand that it's Boston is like a big and diverse area, and so like I'll be like, yeah, I'm actually from here, even though you don't know where it is. So yeah, all predominantly communities of color. That's the big takeaway. Like they're communities of color that people aren't really like acknowledging exist.
No, seriously, I think that's the biggest one. Like, just residents from Boston think like Boston and South, like they just think like the whole Boston area is the only area that exists, but yet there's like other towns that are just not. They don't even have to be aligned with Boston, but like here's kind of my thing. I think like when you're like even if you're not in the Boston area, like towns like Hyde Park, like Dorchester, Roxbury, and then Lynn, Revere, all these towns, even though they're surrounded by Boston, they identify as Boston just because like some people who are not from here, they don't get how each town has its own community, and like that lifestyle can only be described to so many. But because they don't understand that, they believe that Boston is just one city with just like big buildings and just like diverse people. Even when they think diverse people, they think of like Chinatown and they just leave like the black community out, or they leave like the Latinos out, just because like they don't know what's outside of Boston. So that's the big one. But I don't know any other like.
I do. Cambridge is not Boston. It is not Boston. Just because it's on the red line doesn't mean it's part of it. There's a difference.
Yes. Also, to what Crystal said, yeah, that is true, because she says she's gonna have the conversation with students in the South because for the most part they don't know about the communities of color in Boston, and that is very true because I went to school in Washington, D.C. I went to American University and transferred from there. And just like the conversations I would have, like when I'd be like, I'm from Boston, it's just like this like conception or perception that it's all white people. And like there's no black people in Boston. I'm like, here I am, like, yeah, it's just really funny. And that's not just with like, that extends to people in Boston as well. Like I was saying, like people who live here or like just recently moved here or come here for school, like they don't recognize these communities that have been here before them, these communities of color. And just back to like my first anecdote, like when I lived in like it's weird, like sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I'm from Hyde Park, and then they'll be like confused look, and I'll be like, oh, like Milton. They're like, I'm like Lower Mills, because like people know different gentrified areas. Like when I lived in Dorchester, I lived in Ashmont, and that is like right down the street from Lower Mills, and it's just like really funny seeing like how gentrified like the Lower Mills area is. When you literally walk like a few miles down, it's like Dorchester, like it's like the non-gentrified part, and like they're trying to market it as like Lower Mills, this beautiful like new area for like the students and people coming in, and yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. That just reminds me, like, kind of like on a related but unrelated note. Like, I was just like in New York, where I'm from, the other day, and like someone was saying to me like that, since Columbia is buying all of the buildings in Harlem, they were driving someone, and that's whoever was driving someone, and they kept saying, yeah, I'm going to North Manhattan. And he was like, oh, you're going to Harlem, like that's where I grew up. And the girl was like, no, like my realtor said, like I'm going to North Manhattan, like, and it's just like putting these pretty labels on these like areas that they are gentrifying because they want to attract these people that will pay these higher prices and continue to kick out the people of color from the communities. And like, yeah, that's just an example of like a different institution, but in New York, literally they're doing that. And like increasingly, it's such a high rate, and it's just like super, super disheartening. Oh yeah, you're from New York too. Nice, me too. But yeah, I feel like you know exactly what I'm saying. Like Manhattan, like come on, Harlem.
They tried to turn the southern part of Harlem into Soho. Soha. I said no. That's just Harlem.
In New York, it's like
It's so hot.
yeah, but now they're saying like that area in Harlem, like so hot, like
That's capitalism at its finest.
it's like nope, don't like that. So yeah, thank you all for sharing that. And so I guess my question is like, what's one takeaway you want to have people to have from listening to this conversation? And like, you know, that could be there's going to be different Emerson students watching this, like different faculty, because you know we're recording it and put it on our YouTube. So like a myriad of different people within the institution like will be seeing this, and like just wondering what do you guys want them to know as their major takeaway from all of the things that you shared today?
For me, I would say I would want the takeaway to be like, be knowledgeable and or at least aware of like where you're coming from and like where you're coming into, like what community you're entering, and like the people that have been here or been there before you, and like the traditions that have been there, the culture. Just be aware, because you know it's okay to not know things, but like try to at least, I don't know, never mind. You guys know what I'm saying. Like, don't be ignorant to what's going on. You know, like take the time to understand where you're coming into, because you know people have been here before you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. You said it perfectly.
Being a commuter student is exhausting. So, like the struggles of taking the T, any type of public transportation, it is exhausting. Cut us a little bit of slack, please. We need it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I would say that just like what we said earlier, I feel like there should be a space for commuters, just because, just like resonating off the whole conversation, commuter lifestyle is a different beast. So because of that, everybody here should feel some type of not only welcoming, but also just what we said earlier, have that luxury of being a student at Emerson, especially in a big city like Boston. So I think it should be like some type of space or some type of group where we can just all get together and honestly just that we can build better from there. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same idea. And I also think that like a major one is just access to like not so much information, but like I guess just like more knowledge around like being a commuter, I guess. Like even having like emails or something, I guess like when I first got here would have been really helpful to know how to just like, yeah, it wouldn't, I don't want to say like outline how the experience is different, but just kind of saying like, you know, in between classes, like this is where you can go, and I guess just like it being more of a talked about thing. Because I also have this feeling that like there are people that go here that don't really know that they're commuters here. So I think just like, yeah, just talking about it more and showing that there are like different avenues to experience Emerson College.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I definitely also like, I'm still thinking about what you said about like orientation. And I definitely think that definitely needs to be a conversation, like even having like a commuter group of like people, and like maybe you'll find people who are from similar areas to you, and like creating like different groups on like Slack or Facebook or whatever, and see if you can like, you know, carpool or commute together in whatever way. Just to like, you know, have that extra support, since it's like, it's already hard enough just having to figure out how to do all of that on your own without any information. And then just adding to what I'm seeing in the chat, Matthew said, please feel free to reach out to me. I grew up in Boston, JP and Rosie, then moved away from college and grad school and have been back. If you have any questions, email me and I can give you all the email. And he said, I will also talk to off-campus student services. So yeah, it's about to be 3, but I just wanted to say, like, thank you all so much for being here. And like, for my panelists, you guys were amazing. Like, you're such amazing people, all of you. And I'm so happy you're all here. And I know, like, through Intercultural, like, we're definitely here for you to advocate, like, make sure that you have more spaces. And like, I hope you know, like, the Cultural Center, like, anytime, you're always welcome to be in here any time of the day. And I know it's not as convenient as being over there, but you're welcome to eat your lunch or whatever in here and just like hang out, watch TV for as long as you want. And this is definitely like a space that we want you to feel welcome in. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for sharing everything. And yeah, I'll be in touch with all of you. And I see Crystal said she'll also be in touch. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to end the Zoom. Have a great day, rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you. Y'all take care.